So yesterday when we were having our little pre-meeting with the organizers here, they told me that they didn't have anybody that could introduce me. And I took that as a tremendous compliment because, gosh, I had a little sordid past, but they didn't think they had anybody that was up to introducing me. And then they explained to me that, no, they didn't mean that. They didn't mean that they didn't have anybody that was available to introduce me. So anyway, you didn't come to listen to the moderator or to hear the moderator or talk to the moderator. You came here for the panel. And, we've heard in the past couple of days, we've heard that a decision point is coming and that if ISS is not commercially viable, then the LEO President's decisions will be political decisions. We've also heard be big and be bold with the implication or go home. And then the third thing we've heard that we engineers mistake technical feasibility with market capability. So we've got LEO commercialization. We talk about not having LEO commercialization. We do have LEO commercialization, but it's primarily in the world of remote sensing, as you were hearing just a little while ago, and in communications. But we've got to expand that. And for the ISS to remain viable and other low Earth orbit platforms like ISS to be viable, we have to expand the use of the ISS. Now, we've got folks off trying to do this, but in the past, they've been generally on two ends of the spectrum. One end has been self-funded entrepreneurs who are trying to do big and better things. And on the other end, we've had smaller players who are dependent upon people like venture capitalists and upon government funding to move forward. So we needed this middle ground. We needed a middle ground that really has built America's industry in all other areas of large corporations, middle-sized corporations, even small corporations that could bring in their own money and develop their own systems and then sell them to customers. So today we've got 5 examples of those kinds of companies that are doing this. And they've gone off and they're making ISS commercially viable. They're doing the big and the bold. And they are also engineers who are taking the technically feasible and making it economically viable. And that's what we need as we move forward. So what we have is we got Frank DeMauro from Orbital ATK, Chris Ferguson from Boeing, Jeff Manber from Nanoracks, and Steve Lindsey from Sierra Nevada, and then Carlo and Mirra from Airbus Defense and Space. And they're going to tell you about what they're doing. Then we're going to have a question and answer period. We're going to have a longer question and answer period than many sessions do because I think you're going to have lots to talk about to them. And when we do the Q&As, we've got 2 microphones, one on each side. I'd ask you to come forward and ask your question, and then if you have more questions and follow-up questions, please go to the back of the line. I hope we have lines. Maybe we won't, but I hope we have lines. So let's let everybody ask questions and then come back to your second and third and fourth questions. We've got plenty of time for them. So, Frank, you're up.
Okay, well, good morning. Now it's on. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the panel this morning. This has been an inspirational conference, certainly for me. I've been working on the cargo resupply program, the Cygnus program, for 8 years right now, and it's this type of conference really grounds you because you meet a lot of people who are doing some really great things and sending some awesome stuff up to the space station. And Cygnus and Orbital ATK are very proud to be a part of that. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about where Cygnus is and where we're headed. Of course, Cygnus was developed as part of a partnership with NASA for the COT Space Act agreement. We were awarded that back in the early part of 2008 and began the development of Cygnus, really, which at the time its main focus was cargo delivered to the ISS and the removal of disposal cargo. Later that year, of course, we won the CRS contract along with SpaceX, and we had 8 missions put on the contract. And really what we've come up with is a spacecraft that not only delivers cargo to the space station, but has been evolving into more of a science platform and a multi-use spacecraft. So, excuse me. So Orbital ATK has been in the business of building satellites for quite some time. The building blocks of the Cygnus hardware the avionics, the attitude control system really came out of a lot of the work we've done in the past on our GEO spacecraft platforms and LEO spacecraft platforms. And then coupled with what we learned from NASA and working with them in the safety community, we came up with a spacecraft that essentially autonomously rendezvous with the ISS, gets grappled by the robotic arm, by the crew, and can stay on the station for long periods of time, several months if necessary. But what we've learned over time is that more is needed, and we've been able to evolve Cygnus into something that can do more than just deliver the cargo. We can support payloads that can go to low Earth orbit. We can deploy payloads right off of the spacecraft. And a lot of that has come through not only investment from NASA, but investment from within our own company in evolving the capabilities. So we have the ability to carry multiple types of payloads. Right now we carry up to 4 powered mid-deck lockers inside the cargo module. That is evolving to 6 over the next few missions. We did 4 for the first time on this past mission, and it went extremely well. We've got all the data interfaces, the mechanical interfaces, so we've got places to put the cargo and places to put experiments inside the cargo module as necessary. So we're pretty excited about that. The other thing we've evolved is the ability to carry external cargo. So far, we've demonstrated that capability on the outside of the service module. We've 3 times have flown Nanoracks CubeSat deployers, and those have been extremely successful, and we hope to continue to do that in the future. But there's other places to put more external payloads. We can put more on the service module. We can put them on the outside of the payload module. It gives great field of view to space. And so the spacecraft's capabilities in terms of pointing capabilities, long duration on orbit capabilities, as well as a lot of area to mount hardware, gives us really the opportunity to offer a really strong platform. We're looking to the future, of course, with Cygnus. Our primary mission is delivering cargo, valuable cargo, and crew supplies to the International Space Station. We have been to the ISS 7 times right now. We've got a mission coming up this fall, the OA8 mission. But we're continuing to look on how to expand the capability of Cygnus. If you look at the original plan for Cygnus, we had a standard Cygnus which carried about 2,000 kilograms. And the original plan for the enhanced Cygnus was 2,700 kilograms. Well, by working with Thales Alenia Space, our partner and our cargo module provider, and working with NASA, we've been able to expand that capability. So when we increased the volume of the cargo module by 50%, we have now increased our capability of carrying cargo by almost 90%. And so we've been investing and optimizing in how we do that. And so as we've learned how the spacecraft flies, how the cargo is packed, we're able to increase our capabilities. We talked about mid-deck lockers. We have the ability to accommodate significantly more mid-deck lockers and have Cygnus be a science module. Maybe it's a hybrid mission sometime where we're flying maybe a little bit less pressurized cargo, but a little bit more powered mid-deck lockers with more experimentation. We have the ability to stay on orbit a longer period of time. The avionics as designed, as I mentioned, came out of spacecraft that we have flown for many years, which has much more lifetime in its electronics than the typical 3 or 4 months that we would fly. So we can stay on orbit for a long time. And the flexibility of the spacecraft allows us to be at the ISS for some period of time, to fly away from the ISS, and to fly back. And one of the things we're looking at is offering the capability of having a very clean, very low disturbance environment within Cygnus to offer that environment to experimenters and payload providers, which we think will be valuable moving forward. So Cygnus has its prime role, but we think our role, as we've seen, as a secondary role of accommodating additional hardware, additional experimentation, is growing. We've seen a very successful use of Cygnus in the Sapphire experiment with NASA Glenn. 3 times now we have launched Sapphire as a piece of cargo. It stayed in the module after all the other cargo has been removed and all the disposal cargo has been inserted. And then we've flown away, and in a very safe way, in a pressurized environment with typical atmospheric air, been able to fire off, so to speak, that experiment, get all sorts of data, and then downlink that to the ground and have NASA Glenn be able to use that data to study combustion in a microgravity environment. It's that type of thing where you have that type of fire. You don't want to do it on the space station, of course, but here we have a pressurized volume that offers that capability. I think the last mission, we downlinked 50 gigabytes of data from that experiment, so it's extremely successful. So we're going to continue to grow these capabilities. We think Cygnus as a science platform is going to become more and more useful to the user community, not just NASA, but the commercial community. There's space available to fly payloads, and we're very excited about moving Cygnus into the future and supporting the ISS and utilization of space.
Thank you, Chris.
That was a great job. Thank you, Frank. Hey, good morning. Chris Ferguson. I work for Boeing on the commercial crew program. Frank talked about cargo. The other half of the enabling industry to take off in low Earth orbit is the crew part. We're in the middle of a competitive contract, and SpaceX is also involved in this. 1, 2, 3. Right now we have 2 test missions and 6 service missions back and forth to the International Space Station scheduled through 2024 on contract. So it's a very exciting time for us. Where right now our assembly facility is at the Kennedy Space Center. So we through the cooperation of Space Florida, have been able to repurpose former government facilities, the orbiter processing buildings, into a spacecraft factory. So it's a great time. All right. You know, when we talk about sort of commercialization, how do we take a nascent industry and turn it into something that can actually turn a profit? It's having a former astronaut and fighter pilot talk about history is a bit of a risk, but I would like to go and talk a little bit about commercial mail. Commercial mail and delivering mail back and forth in this country started in 1918. And we had the government do it, right? The Army Air Corps delivered mail all over the country until somebody figured out that, hey, maybe that wasn't the best use of government resources. And this piece of legislation called the Kelly Mail Act was brought in, and it essentially told the post office, go out there and contract with commercial companies to carry mail around the country, which they obediently obliged. And before you knew it, within a couple years, there were companies, airline companies that have the name Eastern in them, and United in them, and Boeing in them, all consolidating to compete for these contracts to haul mail all over the country. The interesting thing is these mail contracts actually incentivize building the fleet filled with larger airplanes. And they couldn't always fill the airplanes with mail, and what they would fly in absence so they could fully complement their load was people. And before you knew it, I think history tells the story, and then you find yourself today, and that last bullet's great. In the next 24 hours, 3 million passengers will board 42,000 flights on Boeing jetliners. So this is where the airline industry has come. And Carlo, I'm sure a few will actually get on Airbus airplanes too. So what does that translate to in terms of space? Back in 1984, the first Commercial Space Launch Act was instituted as a way to publicize launch facilities or privatize launch facilities, and be able to take the government's infrastructure that they've invested in these launch facilities and share them with the private industry. And that act has been amended several times throughout the year to talk about things like flying commercial astronauts, indemnification of companies so they don't take on an incredible amount of risk as they try to get started in an industry that really has quite a cost of entry. And it's been a very profitable way to get things going. And as you listen to Frank talk about a little bit earlier, in 2010, 2011, we had demo flights to haul cargo up to the space station, and you can see where that has sort of taken off. So the next step, of course, is where Boeing sits, and that is on the threshold of actually paying passengers back and forth. With NASA, of course, being our flagship customer, but we certainly hope that the business does not stop there. The CST-100 Starliner is designed to carry up to 7 people. For the NASA mission, we'll configure it for 5. NASA has asked us to carry 4 crew members back and forth. That 5th seat can be used either to carry cargo, or perhaps a spaceflight participant if the ISS and the program allows us to do that. We would certainly like to do that someday. But it's a relatively simple spacecraft designed to get you back and forth to low Earth orbit. We're going to fly on the Atlas V, arguably one of the more successful boosters in the history of space launch, with 70+ successful missions. Even the entire Atlas series since back in the 1960s has flown over 700 times, so the Atlas has a pretty prominent name to it. I'd mentioned that we are building the vehicle at the Kennedy Space Center, and it's very encouraging to see what is going on in and around the Kennedy Space Center and the Space Coast. I mentioned that we have our factory facility in the former Orbiter Processing Building number 3, where we have 3 different vehicles in a various stage of construction, 3 crew modules and 3 service modules. We have a few test articles, including our pad abort article, in a form of development, and we're looking forward to seeing that tested early next year. But as you look around, I mentioned we have our X-37 partners across the transfer aisle in the former Orbiter Processing Buildings number 1 and 2. We see the SLS platforms being installed in the VAB. And then I think we've all seen the accomplishments of the various commercial partners that are setting up institutions within and external to the Kennedy Space Center. So that area of the Space Coast has turned into a place where formerly just payloads were processed and launched, into a place where engineering is actually done and fabrication is performed. So it's been a very vibrant institution for the Central Florida area, and we're proud to see that and be a part of it. We are in the middle of a very aggressive test program. I mentioned the pad abort test we have coming up early next year. That'll take place out at the White Sands Test Facility. We're in the middle of a series of parachute drop tests that we're also conducting from a balloon out at White Sands. We are doing drop tests at the NASA Langley facility to test our landing airbag system, as well as the effects of perhaps an airbag out or parachute out test. So a lot going on. And then it's a cradle to grave program. We also train astronauts, and we'll be doing that at the Johnson Space Center, which is where all the astronauts they call home. Our test program will run through June through December of next year, and we'll hopefully get certification not too long thereafter and begin one of our 6 contracted flights. I know ISS is eagerly looking to replace the Soyuz service that the Russians have provided with American service, and we intend to be certainly a part of that. And then, it won't end there. I mentioned NASA is certainly our flagship customer, but we do look forward to a broader reach here. Do we bring in potential foreign governments who are interested in a space program of their own but can't afford the infrastructure? What do we do about tourism? Hopefully science gains a foothold in low Earth orbit. And it's very important, I think, that we develop the business case, because we have a wonderful way to get there. But after the ISS's scheduled retirement in 2024, hopefully 2028, the question is, what will the destination be? And that's really up for us all to decide right now. So thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you. I'm Jeff Manber with Nanoracks. Great to be with you this morning and this whole week. I really enjoyed your presentation because you did something unusual. You took a space program and you put it in the context of society and how we've evolved over the past almost 100 years. And at Nanoracks, we hope that evolution continues. And the next step for us is to see the government become more and more as a customer, just a plain customer, and allowing the private sector to truly have the imagination and the freedom that in every other segment of American society we enjoy in our relations with the government. We've emerged as the go-to for commercial utilization on the space station. We've been in business 7 years, so by far we're the smallest guys up here. I don't know if we're large. I don't know if we're small. We're 50 people now. And so I don't know where that is in the context of this stage. It's sure small. But given that we rely solely on commercial funding and we self-fund all our hardware, I guess it's still pretty large. I think many of the folks in the room know what we do. We work inside the space station with our nano labs, our research platforms, our mixed sticks. We work outside the space station on our satellite deployment. And to date, we've, in about the 6 years of our 7-year existence, the first year was really getting going, we've brought over 550 payloads to the station, 180 plus satellites deployed. And we're really proud of the fact that we exist on customer revenue. How's that for a concept? Okay, I mean, if it was down on the ground, you just, say, sure. I mean, that's how businesses work. But in space, we don't normally work this way. And so Nanoracks is trying to show the industry, and maybe at first ourselves, that you can grow a business through having customer revenue. And one of the places where I argue with my friends in policy all the time is, for me, NASA is a commercial customer. European Union Commission is a commercial customer because they didn't self-fund, they didn't pre-fund my hardware. We went to NASA and said, hey, we think we can do satellite deployment from the space station. Will you give us permission? That's different. And they gave us permission, kindly. And JAXA gave us permission. And then we had to self-fund the development of the hardware. And now maybe NASA comes in as a customer. Maybe they don't. In this case, they slowly are coming in as a customer for our satellite services. And so too agencies like the European Union Commission. But they don't have to. There's no guarantee. And so in my view, the whole subject, the whole discussion in Washington of what is a commercial customer is almost a false one. We all know in America what a commercial customer is. And when I have NASA at Nanoracks, 90-something% of the time, it's as a commercial customer. And so too the high schools, the universities, the biopharma, the satellite companies. We're looking at different markets. One of the questions when we began our satellite deployment was, what's a space station doing in satellite deployment? And of course, this panel is about other uses other than launch vehicles. We're beginning to see a very interesting market for satellite deployment from space station. We have a program called Stash and Deploy, where you can bring your satellites to the station, leave them there for months at a time, and then deploy. I happen to believe that over the next 5, 6, 7 years, we are going to be very disruptive for the launch vehicle market and the desire to launch on demand. I happen to think that there's all sorts of cool things we're seeing. You can add things onto your satellite before you deploy. You can keep it in space before you deploy. So we're showing that stations have a unique role in this, and we actually think it's one of the first major markets for commercial platforms. And across the board, I won't go through everything, but I'll say that the way that we see ourselves being disruptive continues to grow in size and complexity. I'll talk about both our commercial airlock project in partnership with our friends at Boeing, and the Ixion project, where we're looking at reusing upper stages of vehicles as commercial habitats. So for us, the airlock, right now, my time's taken up a great deal on the airlock program. Again, to give you some background, we are very grateful that JAXA, through the NASA partnership and barter, has given us access to the airlock. But you know what? We saw a bigger market if we were willing to self-invest. And that's what the commercial sector does so well, isn't it? So we went to NASA and we said, we'd like to do the world's first commercial airlock. We call it the Gateway to Space. And NASA, after about a year, said yes, and we now have all the approvals that we need, and we appreciate that. But we have to fund it. And so we've been talking to a number of capital sources, and in December, I think, January, December, we announced that Boeing is our main partner, and we're real pleased to have their expertise. And when I went to one person at NASA and said that we were working with Boeing, his comment was, I don't know if this is really good or I'm afraid or what, but the fact that we're working with Boeing, I take as a really good sign for the future of where we're going. And let me say now, of course, we're working with Airbus. They manufactured our external platform. And at the time, I said we're probably the smallest customer that's ever paid Airbus. And we work closely with Orbital, and we hope to grow that relationship. So we're working with a lot of the folks in the industry, and we appreciate that. So we have our partnerships now. We're moving forward. We're manifested for launch in 2019. And we expect to sign our first customers for the airlock in the third quarter of this year. We're in some discussions with NASA on commercially using the airlock. But again, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee we'll reach an agreement. When we went forward, NASA was not telling us that there'll be a commercial customer. We're also in fascinating discussions with NASA over how do we give back? What's the role of the partnership? And the partnership is evolving. And we do get, as all of us do who use the American side of the International Space Station, we do get certain things at no cost. And at Nanoracks, we have evolved, sometimes kicking and screaming, but we are evolving into also giving back to the taxpayer and to NASA via use of services. And that's important as we go to the next step. And so this is a picture of where the airlock will be. And the other big project we're working on now, we're part of the Next Step program. You have Orbital and Lockheed and Boeing and Bigelow and Sierra Nevada, and Nanoracks was included in that. And we're part of a team that's Loral and Space Adventures, and we're looking at using the ULA Atlas V, the second stage Cygnus, as a repurpose as a commercial habitat. Again, it fits into our DNA. We're not in the hardware business. We're in the utilization business and really the real estate business. If we can use other people's real estate, we're very happy because it lowers the cost. And if you lower the cost, you lower the price. And if you lower the price, you get more customers. And so we're in the middle of a 5-month study. Actually, we've passed the middle now, and everything's going very well at looking at the technical aspects of reusing existing upper stages for commercial habitats. And then, so that's where it attached to the station. It could go to one of several ports, and we fully expect to go forward in our plans in reusing upper stages and have them attached to ISS or not attached to ISS as the market suggests. So one other comment, we didn't have a slide here, but as I said, we're kind of in the real estate business. And we're also delighted that we're working with Blue Origin on the New Shepard project. And for us, it's about understanding the market more and more, seeing where the market opportunities are, self-funding that, and just sort of go along with the macro trend in our society of the government behaving more as a customer. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Lindsey. I work for Sierra Nevada Corporation and happy to be here today at the ISS conference. And want to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing at SNC. And if you look at this first chart, you can see I got a picture of the Dream Chaser, of course, but I got a picture of a bunch of other things. So what I wanted to start with is kind of give some of you a little background on our company, because every time I go out here and speak, I'm surprised how many people have not heard of us, or they think we're a beer company. I know I did when they first called me. So, and then I found out the truth. But anyway, so we've been around for quite a while. What's unique about us, and this plays into what we're doing with Dream Chaser and why we're in Dream Chaser, is that we're a privately held company. We don't have a board of directors, which basically means our owners decide what we invest in, and they can take a very long-term view of the future as opposed to a short-term view. We don't have to please shareholders and worry about the price of our stock, because there isn't any. But we're a systems engineering group. We have about 3,000 employees. We're in 19 states and 3 different countries right now. We do a lot of different things. One of our areas down in south part of Denver, we modify aircraft for special missions. We probably have almost 300 aircraft flying around the world right now that we do. We do a lot of other things with the Department of Defense. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of those, but if you hop on our website, you can see some of the other things that we do. We've been in business for about 51 years, sustained growth, no long-term debt, continuously profitable, and that's allowed our owners to invest a lot into research and development, a lot into new programs. Where I work is Space Systems Group. We're located in Louisville, Colorado, up near Boulder, and we actually have 4 business units. We have a spacecraft systems group that builds small satellites for launch. Most recently, we launched 17 Orbcomm 2 satellites into orbit that are operating. They basically track shipping all over the world. Working on a number of other projects there, including getting into some high-altitude balloon stuff with them in one of our other groups. We have a space technologies group that builds precision gimbals, pointing devices. We build PCBMs, different things like that, thermal louvers. We have a propulsion and environmental systems group. That's, for those of you familiar with Orbitech, that's who Orbitech is. They do reaction control system and main engines. The Veggie experiments on Space Station, they built that, and they're actually doing environmental controls, thermal controls, and reaction controls for the Dream Chaser spacecraft. And then finally, Space Exploration Systems, which is my group, centered around, of course, the Dream Chaser, but basically we're doing Dream Chaser and Dream Chaser derivative technologies. This is one of my favorite charts, but our group, which again is not that well known, we actually build components and subsystems. This is a picture of all of the planets that we've been to with Sierra Nevada Components, and we've been to every planet except Uranus and Neptune, mostly because we don't have missions there yet, but I'm sure we'll be on them when we go. So been involved in that for a lot of years. So let me jump into Dream Chaser, which is near and dear to my heart. Why I left NASA and came to here was for this program. A little bit of history of it. Some of you may know this history, some of you may not, but it goes back to the early 80s, and it's kind of like a Cold War spy novel. There was a Australian P-3 flying over the ocean, and they flew over a Russian trawler, and the Russian trawler was pulling something out of the water. And so they took a bunch of pictures, and they sent them back to the U.S., to the CIA. The CIA looked at these pictures of this spacecraft in the upper right corner being pulled out, and the CIA looked at it and said, well, we're not sure exactly what this is, but we're pretty sure we want one. So they actually sent the information to NASA Langley, and NASA Langley looked at it and started reverse engineering. And probably the what's called the Bohr 4 came out of our lifting body program out of Dryden in the early 60s. And so they reverse engineered it, and they created this thing called the HL-20. And it was based on the imagery. They took the shape, they put it in the wind tunnel, they did a lot of CFD on it, they analyzed the shape, found out it was a stable, good L/D lifting body with very, very good flight characteristics, stable all the way through the flight regime. And so NASA Langley did a lot of work over 12 years, probably 1,200 wind tunnel tests, a lot of development. I actually, when I was at NASA, participated in some handling quality studies of the HL-20 when I was there. At one time it was going to go to ISS, be a crew rescue vehicle, had a lot of different ideas, but then it was put on the shelf. And this is where the commercial partnership comes in for us first. A company called SpaceDead that later became Sierra Nevada Corporation actually licensed this. We went to Mike Griffin and asked him when he was administrator, hey, can we license this? Can we get the data? Can we start developing it? And he agreed, and we got the original mock-up from Langley and all of the data, and we took all that, and out of that came the Dream Chaser spacecraft, which we've been working on since then. With NASA, thankfully, they helped us out. We got contracts on CCDev-1, CCDev-2, CCI-CAP, and CPC contracts to develop the crewed version of the vehicle, and we worked on that when I first came in there, so we were primarily working on. And then we did compete for the crew contract. Unfortunately, we weren't selected for that, but at the same time, we were competing for the CRS-2 contract. So we developed the cargo version, which is what we're working on primarily now. and we modified our vehicle into the cargo system for the Cirrus-2 program. We were fortunate enough to be selected by NASA for that, and so for about the last year, we've been executing on that program. So we're all the way through Integration Review 3 was in February. That's essentially PDR for us, and we're marching toward Integration Review 4, which is essentially CDR. So we're in between PDR and CDR, and I got the rest of my team buried in Colorado up to their elbows in work, scrambling and pumping out drawings. So we're working fast and furious on that. Give you an idea of the size of the vehicle. Space Shuttle, Dream Chaser, we're just a little bit smaller, but just as mighty. We like to think so. So there's a comparison of the two vehicles. Let me talk about the cargo system, what that looks like. So what we did is we took our crewed vehicle and we made a few modifications to it. We, being a pilot, the saddest part is we got rid of the windows because we figured the payloads don't need windows. We actually took the wings, we made them deployable wings, and the reason we did that is so that we could fit inside a fairing. The reason we want to be inside a fairing is because we can go at a higher Q on asset and get more payload to orbit. We also added a cargo vehicle or cargo module onto the back, which allowed us to carry more pressurized payload, and then around the outside carry unpressurized powered payloads for the space station in accordance with the Cirrus-2 requirements. Also added solar arrays, making our entire system using rechargeable batteries and also giving us extended loiter time. And this is where the commercialization piece of this really comes in. Adding those things, besides helping us with the Cirrus-2 contract and meeting the space station's requirements for those, also enables the commercial applications of this vehicle that I'm going to talk about in a minute. The other thing that's unique about it is the ability to return to Earth, land on a runway, 1.5 Gs on entry, much like the space shuttle. And the other thing that's different than the space shuttle is because we don't have any toxic propellants or any toxic chemicals on board. Basically, as soon as we land, as soon as the wheels stop, we can drive right up to the vehicle, open the hatch, and pull the critical payloads out. And so that's one of the capabilities we think that kind of sets us apart, is the ability to return a lot of cargo and critical science back to Earth. This is a picture. We did our first flight test on our atmospheric vehicle back in 2013. Successful. We had a landing gear anomaly and skidded down the runway, but other than that, the aerodynamics worked great. The interesting thing about this little comparison between, we flew on the same day as the Space Shuttle Enterprise flew their final flight. And what I conclude from this picture is that the camera technology has gotten a lot better since 1977. But so there's our vehicle now. What we did with it's the same vehicle that you saw in that picture. We've upgraded this vehicle. We actually have orbital vehicle avionics on board, complete set, redundant avionics, and we're actually testing the orbital vehicle avionics with the orbital flight software on our next flight test, which will give us certification credit for Cirrus-2 for the landing, descent and landing portion of the flight phase. A little different than the first flight. First flight, we were a zero failure tolerant, kind of a one-off system to just test the aerodynamics of the vehicle. This time, besides testing aerodynamics, we're going to get a good look at all of our integrated avionics and integrated flight software on this vehicle. So currently out at Edwards Air Force Base, we've been doing workups to a flight test, and we're getting ready to fly this fall. Right now, we're struggling with helicopter availability. We actually get released off a helicopter. And unfortunately, helicopters are heavily used in the fire season. If you've been watching the TV, you see all the fires going on, and those helicopters are all out doing that, so that kind of affects our ability to fly. But we're basically ready to fly, waiting for the right time to go do that. So look for that this fall. Let me jump into Space Exploration Systems, my group, and again, we're centered around the Dream Chaser. But we're looking at other things. So we continue to look at crewed missions, free flying, science remote sensing, on-orbit robotic deployment, and as well as exploration support. We wouldn't be in the Dream Chaser business, our company wouldn't, if we didn't see a future that's beyond the space station. The space station is an anchor tenant for us. The Cirrus-2 program is the key for us. But we've always looked at this vehicle. Even the selection of the vehicle from the very beginning was designed after commercializing low Earth orbit and looking at missions beyond space station. And let me give you a couple of examples of things that we're working on right now. You may have heard about this in the news, but we've been working with the United Nations for about 2 years. And basically the idea was to put together a mission, a free-flying science mission with our vehicle that would allow multiple countries to participate, develop their own payloads, put them on the vehicle, and then pick one of those countries and actually, because we're a non-toxic vehicle and we don't have anything hazardous on board, and we're doing a lot of landing site studies now, be able to land in their country. That's one of the unique things about our vehicle as opposed to like a space shuttle, is we can land anywhere in the world. So we've been working this with the United Nations in the last couple of years. We have their backing. Interestingly enough, we just had a vote in June with the United Nations, and the way United Nations work for this effort, we had to get 84 countries to unanimously agree to go forward with this project. And for those of you that work on ISS and work in the international partnership there, imagine doing 84 countries, including some of them that are not our friends, like Cuba and Venezuela and places like that. Well, we went through believe it or not, they voted this in unanimously, and so now we're off to the next step. Third and fourth quarter of this year, we'll be making a call for payloads. We're going to put together this mission and then figure out, when to do it and where to go to. So, what is the advantage? Well, there's a lot of nations out there that would have no presence in space or have no presence in space, and quite frankly, no hope for a presence in space unless they're given an opportunity like this. But for that country, we could provide research and development for them, some economic development. Obviously, education and STEM are critical to those countries. Help them develop their infrastructure, and more importantly, the pride of knowing that your country is going into space as part of this mission. And so that's the focus of the UN. That's what we're trying to put together as a way to commercialize, but not just commercialize, but also bring in a larger international partnership into low Earth orbit. Another example that we're working on is, and as you all know, there's a certain number of countries involved in the space station, and each nation's involvement or each agency's involvement is based on their contribution to the common operating costs and things like that, and what they did to build the space station. So while there's a lot of countries involved, it's somewhat of a closed club in terms of getting involved in the space station. What we're offering is, we call it Dream Chaser Global. And just imagine there are a number of nations out there, and we're in discussions with a lot of them, that really want to have their own space program, but the cost of entry either into the ISS or the cost of entry just to create your own space organization is so prohibitive they can't do it. But imagine if for the cost of a satellite launch, we could present you a turnkey program where you could have your own mission, we could land in your country, you could fly all your payloads or on a crewed vehicle, fly your astronauts, and provide you a turnkey space program for essentially the price of a satellite launch. And that's what Dream Chaser Global is all about. And so this is getting a lot of excitement in many places that we've been talking to. We have a lot of support for it, and we're continuing to work that. Last example I'll talk about that's coming out of our group is Next Step 2. As mentioned, we're one of the selectees on the Next Step 2 program. Hope to get started on that very soon for the Deep Space Outpost. But we're looking at this, and we're always keeping an eye on what else can this do beyond just the Deep Space Outpost. And just a quick chart on how we're thinking about this. What we're looking at is commercial applications for our Next Step 2 technologies. We want to advance LEO commercialization. Again, that is our focus. That is what we're working on. The elements that we've proposed in our study that we're going to be working on, we have volume that would allow this to be potentially a commercial space station. We could expand powered payload capabilities, both with our own vehicle, that's what we're actually looking at now as another effort, as well as providing it at the gateway itself. You could use this as building blocks to do a commercial LEO space station. We could do long-duration payload operations, either man-tended or remotely, and the inflatable structure that we've proposed could potentially be a large habitable volume if space tourism takes off, assuming that the cost of launches come down to the point where it's worth it and the market grows in that area. So I think that was it for me, but anyway, so we're in the business to commercialize low Earth orbit. We are focused on that. Every time we do anything with Dream Chaser, we're always thinking about how that applies to the future, either beyond space station or into other commercial markets. Thank you.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Carlo Mirra with Airbus. I've been working on the ISS program, I think, all my life. I mean, as a system engineer, researcher, operator, manager. So I like to say that if the gene in space people who sample my blood, they will discover the ISS gene inside. It's great to be here, and it's great to talk to so many people and discover that basically we all have a feeling that we are going through exciting times, big, fast changes, global changes, which are not just driven by the technology, the innovation, the scientific discoveries, but also the overall economical situation, the geopolitical situation that, of course, is affecting space, is affecting low Earth orbit. And those that have been in the program for a while have seen this coming and going, even in a predictable way, with the regular cycles like solar activities over the several years. But this time we have a new, let's say, a new situation. We have we see something different and something that makes us believe that there are real, serious, concrete opportunities behind the corner. This can be summarized in a few points. Clearly, there is a new business environment in place. There are a number of new actors emerging, new forms of financing, new interests that are making, let's say, the environment much more attractive. Of course, compared to last times, I would say that we have technologies available that were not available before and that can make some of those visions much more realistic. Especially in Europe, I have to say that there is a visible, tangible, different attitude by many governments that are eager to foster development of new markets. I mean, looking at new frontiers, looking at new opportunities, where to create new leaderships and maybe give new priorities to regional industries as the new, let's say, economies are developing. And last but not least, since I belong to that category, I observe a bolder attitude in the private sector that is definitely much more willing to put in capital at risk in order to develop space capabilities, infrastructure, and services. So as far as Airbus is concerned, under the motto to make LEO a marketplace for commodities, we are concentrating on, let's say, 4 major pillars. And one, which has been in a way shared also with my other colleague panelists here, is the real estate development. One example for all is this Bartolomeo platform, and some of you might have seen already in the exhibit. And it's basically a platform that is developed with industry money and is operated via PPP with the European Space Agency in order to offer a sort of unrivaled, let's say, accommodation opportunity for research and technology, but also, and this is what I actually like most, as a ground to develop new services and to offer the opportunities to third parties, even new companies, to run their own business out of our real estate. We are also actively working on building a space product lines out of our resident technologies, putting together our capabilities, identify products and finished products that are interesting for the market. And one case is definitely related to commercial environmental control systems, where basically we put together our competencies in mastering, carbon dioxide scrubbers, electrolysis, subatomic reactors, in order to offer a full, let's say, air revitalization system that, as everybody knows, is an essential element for human presence in space. Clearly, we want to foster LEO utilization demand, and not just with a direct involvement of Airbus. I mean, we are infrastructure developers, and then the more demand for infrastructure exists, the more opportunities for companies like us will develop. And last but also not least, especially valid also from nowadays, is to increase the affordability, which means modernize even existing platforms, the operational concept, trying to digitalize, automatize where possible, because the technology is today so reliable that you can really do a lot with that. but not to replace humans, but to offer basically humans, let's say, an invaluable tool in order to cooperate and do other activities in space. So I took basically one example, which is this Bartolomeo. Now, many people are wondering why Bartolomeo. I mean, there's a logic behind that. I mean, Airbus has developed the Columbus module, and Columbus was Christopher, but there was also a Bartolomeo Columbus, which was a little brother. So we like to see the platform as a little brother of the big module in this case. And this is something that has been recently completely funded by the company in terms of development. So we are, let's say, hardly beating on the drum in order to maintain our schedule and being able, let's say, to enter into business in the third quarter of 2019. We are basically in the final process of putting ink on paper with the agency for the PPP formalization, which is happening in 2 months from now. The mission integration activity has already started in order to ensure a proper, let's say, upload and installation resources of the infrastructure. Sales campaign is started, the reservation agreement have been signed, the sales pipeline is being published, so the engine is now actively running. What is that about? This is an exposed facility. It's, as you can see, mounted on the ram side of the Columbus module, and then I like to see that as a sort of the figurehead of the ship, because basically it's really on the front side of Columbus, so it offers a very, very wide field of view for many applications, and those that reported in the green boxes in this chart are just an idea of what are the markets that we are currently tapping. So we have capabilities for nadir viewing, zenith viewing, technological demonstrations, any sort of stuff, and probably only fantasy can be a limit to these kind of things. We are working also in order to have, let's say, high data downlink transmission capability with with an optical link, and all these things are part of our industrial partnership. The commercial approach that we are following is really very simple. I mean, we try to keep it as simple as possible. We sell by slots. I mean, think of a condominium, think of apartments, and basically we sell one apartment, we rent one apartment per year. I mean, a unit is basically one slot per year, so 2 units would represent 2 slots for 1 year or 1 slot for 2 years. That's basically the same. So we offer the complete end-to-end service, so responsible for the mission engineering integration, for the payload data retrieval. The customer has only to concentrate on his own hardware, so to ensure that functionality and standalone safety is guaranteed. We offer also payload return, if necessary, as an optional services, no fast pricing, very straightforward. We are addressing any sort of customer, being institutional, commercial, educational, if this should be the case. And we are already working to exploit our, let's say, company global sales network, which is, as you probably know, really worldwide. So in conclusion, there are important points. I mean, I'm not saying things are easy. I mean, there's still a long way to go. There are a number of hurdles to be overcome, but there are important factors that we need to consider. We are transiting from a contractual level to a partner entrepreneurial level, and this is a major thing. We are not just implementing the requirement of the customer, we are writing the requirement, we are discussing the business cases, we are influencing the ability to develop some of these cases, which is, in my opinion, an incredible step forward. We are probing the soils with this pilot project. I mean, Bartolomeo, the Eclipse, and these kind of things are just a number of examples out of our product line. As you all know, I didn't say that in the beginning, but basically ATV, Columbus, and so on, most of the infrastructure developed in Europe for ISS utilization and servicing has been done by our company. Is essential to reach quick wins. So we thought that some of the projects that we have now in the pipelines are also important in order to provide the necessary evidence also to the decision makers in the company to show that this is a market that has definitely potentials. And one final message, which is of course important, we are now fully covered by the, let's say, IGA and cross-waiver reliabilities on the ISS, but once we think in the long term, we think of real estate assets belonging to private sector and so on, governance rules, regulatory environment are as essential as the entrepreneurship that we are trying to demonstrate today. Thank you very much for your attention.